have somebody else who switches this on for me, because it's usually in another room. But I'll answer the 4 questions that I thought came up. So I agree with you that this should start happening in the schools, and it's about civics, philology, and philosophy, because it is about understanding the world in more complex terms, knowing the world in its concrete terms that you live in, and be able to negotiate in that world in a literate, informed way, so that you know what it means to sign a form, but you also know why the form isn't in your interest. So that's crucial. And I think too often the new educational policies that I hear from government is very monkey stick banana. And here I'm thinking through The Lives of Animals by J.M. Coetzee, where Sultan is put in a cage, and they put bananas in the cage, and then they take the bananas out, and he has to figure out how to get the bananas beyond the bars. Then they move the bananas further away, and they give him a stick, so he has to figure out how to use the stick to get the bananas. Then they put the bananas high up, and he has to figure out how to grab them. Then they put crates, and he has to stack the crates. Then they put stones in the crates. And all that Sultan constantly does, Coetzee tells us, is he never thinks about the nature of this penal colony. He never thinks about the sadistic games being played with food by his captors. He's always only thinking how to use this stick to get those bananas. And I think too often our education system is about how do you get this degree to get that job, how do you get that job to get that money, to get that car, to get that woman, to get that life, to get that success. And that, I think, is part of the problem, because I did not grow up in a family where those were the values, and so I could live in a country where those were the dominant values, but at home, those were not the values. If I wanted things, my mother would say to me, tough, you want to go live with those people who can give you those things? Go. You'll be back before sunset. Right? So those kinds of ideas of, we assume that the primary education system is the only education system, but that's what the public broadcaster is useful for. If you pump out 24/7 dreams of glitz and glamour and success by lottery to people, why are you surprised that you have the kind of society that we have now, where human lives are not valued, but glitz and glamour and the ability to pour champagne over your Rolex watch is seen as some kind of achievement? Burning Ultramel, burning notes, that kind of a sense of materialism. Because if your politicians are driving around in expensive cars instead of taking taxis, if they live in gated communities instead of in townships, if the NGO workers go to Bantry Bay but work in Khayelitsha for toilets, you have that kind of internal contradiction. Why should anybody want to stay in Khayelitsha? I'm going to try and get out of Khayelitsha and get into Bantry Bay one way or the other, literally or metaphorically. In terms of journalism, I must take a slightly more optimistic view of journalism. Because some of the most important things we know today about the history of the world, we know because of journalists like Amira Hass, who left her Israeli life, went into the West Bank, went into Gaza, and told us the story. I'm thinking of Günter Waldorf, who actually unearthed the Turkish migrant labor story. I'm thinking of Robert Fisk, of Eduardo Galeano, of Edward Said himself. So to me, it's not that we should have these broad generalizations. I agree that a lot of journalism is exactly what it is. Journalism, it's day-to-day fodder that's amusing, entertaining, and disappears from sight. But inside that, there is a hell of a lot of stuff that actually is absolutely essential, and without which, whatever progress we imagine we've made would be missing. And so I would hate to live in a world where there isn't journalism of some kind. I'm not a great fan. I don't think of myself as a journalist, even though every now and again I'm asked to do it, because it's not an easy job. But at the same time, Martha Gellhorn's work in the Second World War is absolutely crucial. I may not like the particular work, but Jacques Poe and Max Dupre's work in Late Apartheid absolutely essential to our understanding of death squads, vlakplaas, etc. Love as a political value is absolutely crucial. I do believe in thinking of love as a political value, but it's not the kind of love that's heterosexual or heteronormative or between men and women. It's a radical act of thinking of the sentient beings, of the planet itself, of our relationship to sustainability, to the environment in which we live, which actually isn't a throw forward, it's a throw back. Because the people who live this value most successfully and have been on this planet the longest in the organizational modes they're in are what we think of as Paleolithic people. They're the indigenous people who have been exterminated or are being exterminated actively by the industrial civilization that we're addicted to. So if we want to reintroduce love as a political value, it requires of us a far more, to quote the 5th question, revolutionary mindset, which is to rethink the political as outside of just parties, outside of our own lifestyle, our own little sector of the world. There's one planet. If it down spirals, it doesn't matter how politically educated, how valuable, how democratic your little corner of the world is. If the entire planet is in free fall spin because of climate change and its consequences, because of nuclear pollution of the oceans, it doesn't matter how democratic you are in the Republic of South Africa if the rest of the world is falling apart. because it doesn't even work in the Republic of South Africa to retreat behind the walls of Steyn City or Waterfall Valley Estate or any of these other really vulgar, nouveau riche, tacky phenomena that people retreat into. Because in the end, those walls will fall. If the walls of Jericho fell, if the Great Wall of China couldn't keep the barbarians at bay, what chance do you have with an ESCOM failure wall keeping the barbarians of Diepsloot out of your Steyn City mansion, where you are employing Zimbabweans to guard you against South Africans, and they may very well soon go home because of the already xenophobic tweets out there saying, we've got rid of Mugabe, leave, right? So I think one of those revolutionary rethinkings require of us to unlearn the past, and some of us find that very difficult. I am addicted to the black consciousness education I had in the 1980s as a child. And that allowed me to not think categorically, because what I think we have in South Africa is an addiction to categories. And as Bessie had said, with all of those signs and divisions, you end up with no people at all. What we're seeing in this contemporary moment, not just in South Africa, but in the world, is either an attempt to pretend that the categories never existed and therefore have no consequence, a kind of liberal absurdity that, oh, it shouldn't matter, we're all equal now. You know, we're not. Look at Diepsloot, we're not all equal. People live in Diepsloot for a reason, because they looked a particular way and they were categorized in a particular way. But people should be educated into believing that they're not just those categories. To go via Denise Riley, am I that name? No, I am not that name. I am more than that name. So every time somebody comes across me, they have to do a little bit of psychiatric and cabaret dissonance issues, because accent doesn't match skin tone. You know, I've had this. Part of living in the world is changing the world. It's about ensuring that everybody has the right to do what I currently do. People don't jump the queue in front of me in Pick and Pay, because I go after them, take their little goodies, put it back in the trolley and go, no, you don't get to skip the line. And as I was told, you are not fit to live among human beings. And I had to correct this person and say, the days in which people like you decided who got to decide who was and wasn't human, long gone. Welcome to 2015. So this is about active education. And I didn't learn this because I learned this from my mother, who refused. I learned this from other people who refused to be that name. Rosa Parks, who moved to the front of that bus, was a moment of education. We must teach our children to be able to resist. When, my 10-year-old wanted to do a certain thing and the teacher said no, I said, no, you need to go back to the teacher and say, no, I will not do this. You will allow me to do what I want to do. It's about empowering young people. And so when young people in 2015 stood up and said, this and no more, what did we do? We didn't listen. We said these are destroyers of paintings, as if paintings are more valuable than human lives, as if the rubbish paintings in the Fuller Hall of the University of Cape Town, which I've seen, and I have an art history background, so I know they're rubbish, as if they're somehow more important than their pain, their life, their horror, or their joy. Why is it that we're so attached to stuff? Because we're attached to the categories that come with those things. And it's time for that love, in a far more radical sense, to come in, because it's not just love of other people. It's love of the animals that we consume in such large numbers that the society is obscene, because we've put those lives behind walls. It doesn't matter how the chickens suffer. It doesn't make a difference how the cows live, because eventually they're just there to sustain my life. And this is not to say that poor people are like cattle. But isn't it tragic that we treat them exactly the same way? That what happens to them should happen behind high walls away from me. I'm not particularly interested. And if they breach the barrier, they must be dealt with. And it's that radical change of how we live in this environment that I think is far more important to happen. Thank you.